You think you want to be alone. No traffic, no crowds, no noise, just open land in every direction as far as you can see. Now imagine that, but permanent. The nearest human being is 30 miles away. The nearest hospital is 3 days on horseback. And at 2 a.m. in January, the temperature outside your shelter drops to minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and your entire food supply just died in the snow. Welcome to Mongolia, the emptiest country on Earth. Not the most dramatic, not the most dangerous in a war zone kind of way, but when you actually sit down and calculate what it would take to survive there on your own, not as a tourist with a warm hotel and a return flight, but genuinely on your own, relying on the land, the answer gets sobering very fast. Because Mongolia is not empty because people have not tried. It is empty because the land itself, without preparation and knowledge built over centuries, kills you in ways that are slow, quiet, and absolute. And right now, in 2025, it is getting worse. Let us start with the basics, because the title of the world's emptiest country needs some context before we get into the survival math. Mongolia has just over 3.4 million people spread across 1.56 million square kilometers, an area roughly the size of Alaska and Texas combined. That works out to 2 people per square kilometer. 2 people per square kilometer. For comparison, New York City has over 10,000 people per square kilometer. Even the American Midwest, which most people would consider sparse, has dozens of people per square kilometer. In Mongolia, you can drive for hours in any direction and not see a single building, a single power line, or a single road that would show up on a map. Almost half the entire population lives in the capital Ulaanbaatar, which means the other 500,000+ people are scattered across one of the most geographically brutal landscapes on the planet. The Gobi Desert covers the south. Mountains dominate the north and west. The interior is endless, rolling steppe, grassland that looks beautiful in summer and becomes a kill zone in winter. And here is where the survival question gets really specific, because the threat in Mongolia is not what most people picture when they imagine wilderness danger. You are not worried about predators or hostile people or running out of water in a desert. The threat in Mongolia has a name. The Mongolians call it a DZUD. If you do not know what one is, the fact that it has been happening with increasing frequency since 2023 should concern you deeply. A dzud is a specific weather phenomenon unique to Mongolia, a combination of a dry summer followed by an extreme winter. What happens is this. Summer drought means the grass does not grow properly, so animals cannot build up the fat reserves they need to survive cold weather. Then winter arrives and hits hard, with temperatures plunging to minus 45, sometimes minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit in certain regions. Heavy snow buries the grassland. And then comes the worst version, the Iron Dzudi, where a brief thaw is followed by a rapid hard freeze that locks the entire pasture in a sheet of ice. Animals cannot break through. They cannot eat. They freeze to death standing in the field. In the winter of 2023 to 2024, a dzud killed 8.1 million animals across Mongolia, livestock that real families depended on for food, income, and survival. 90% of the entire country was classified as being at high risk. 100,000 herder families were considered in the most vulnerable category. By early March 2024, 1,344 herders had lost their entire herd. Every single animal was gone in one winter. And this is not an anomaly. Historically, dzuds happened roughly every 10 years. Since 2015, 6 major dzuds have occurred in under a decade. The land is getting more dangerous, and the climate is making the winters less predictable. You arrive in rural Mongolia in October with basic gear, warm clothes, a tent, some food supplies, and maybe a satellite phone. You've done your research. You're reasonably fit. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not peaceful silence, big silence. The kind that communicates scale in a way that nothing else can. On a clear day, you can see mountains 60 miles away because there is literally nothing between you and them. The air is extraordinarily clean. The stars at night are overwhelming. If you arrived in late summer, honestly, it might be genuinely gorgeous. Then November starts, and the thing is, you already know it is going to get cold. You have read the numbers. You are prepared for cold. But minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit is not just prepared for cold. It is a category of cold that reorganizes your priorities immediately. At that temperature, exposed skin gets frostbite in about 10 minutes. Metal tools stick to your bare hand like glue. Your breath does not just steam, it crackles. Diesel fuel starts to gel. Rubber cracks. The wind on the open steppe is not gentle. It comes from Siberia in the north, across flat land with nothing to slow it, and it hits you like being pushed. Wind chill at minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit with a sustained wind is minus 55 degrees Fahrenheit or worse. Your body loses heat at a rate your shelter has to work constantly to overcome. But here is the thing that surprises people who research this. The cold is not necessarily what kills you first. The cold is manageable if you have two things: fuel and food. Mongolian nomads know this. Their traditional felt tent, called a gur, is extraordinarily well designed for this environment. Circular to reduce wind resistance, insulated with layers of felt, and heated by a central wood or dung-burning stove that the family manages constantly through the night. A properly maintained gur in a Dizud winter keeps a family alive where a modern tent would kill you inside 12 hours. The problem is that keeping the stove burning requires constant fuel. If you run out of fuel, and if you are alone and injured or exhausted, or if your fuel source is buried under 3 feet of snow, the gear goes cold. At minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside, a cold gear becomes a tent. A tent at minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit becomes a coffin. Food is the other variable that quietly ends you. Mongolia's traditional diet is almost entirely meat and dairy because in winter there is nothing else. No fresh vegetables, no growing season. The ground is frozen solid. If you did not stock enough food before the first freeze, and if the nearest supply point is blocked by snow and a broken road, you wait. Sometimes days, sometimes longer. The Dzud of 2023 to 2024 cut off 13,500 households from basic supply routes. The government airlifted fodder and food via helicopter to the most remote areas. But even with that, close to 6,000 households ran out of food entirely. These are people who know the land, who have survived there for generations, who have the knowledge and the equipment built specifically for this environment. So what happens to the person who came in from outside, alone, without that generational knowledge? The Mongolian nomads survived through something that most Western survival thinking completely misses. They survive through community and movement. Nomadic life works because families pool resources, read pasture conditions, and move. The Otor movement is a coping strategy that goes back centuries. When conditions get bad in one area, families migrate to better pasture. In the 2024 DZUD, 18,859 herder families used this strategy. They strategy, relocating themselves and their animals across provinces to keep the herd alive. A lone outsider cannot replicate any of this. You do not have the network to know where to move. You do not have animals to move. And you are already at the bottom of a knowledge deficit that took centuries to build. Here's the actual survival timeline if you arrive in rural Mongolia with no local contacts and no prior training. Summer is survivable with basic skills. Water is available, temperatures are reasonable, you can forage, and the land is almost impossibly beautiful. Fall is a warning you might not recognize as a warning. Winter, specifically a Dzud winter, is where the calculation breaks down completely for someone without deep local knowledge. 3 to 5 weeks without the right shelter, fuel, and food network, and you are in serious trouble. The Mongolian government's own emergency commission identified that even experienced herders needed external assistance within weeks during the 2024 event. And yet, And this is the part that changes everything about how you see this place. The Mongolians have lived here for thousands of years, not by fighting the land, but by understanding it. The gear, the nomadic movement, the Otor strategy, the way they read snow and sky and the condition of the grass, all of it is accumulated intelligence about how to coexist with an environment that punishes ignorance with absolute efficiency. Every nomad alive in Mongolia today carries survival knowledge that no amount of online wilderness content can replicate. They are, in the most literal sense, masters of the emptiest country on Earth. The question is not whether Mongolia is survivable. It obviously is. 3 million people do it every day. The question is whether you could survive there alone, without their knowledge, starting from scratch. And the answer the Dizud data gives you is clear. You would have about 1 season to learn what it took them 1,000 years to figure out. Drop your answer in the comments. How long do you think you'd last? See you next one.